Can you say bonefish?
Bonefish.
Hey, welcome. This is Bonefish, an Animal Collective podcast. My name's Christian.
I'm Justin.
And we're just two guys who like Animal Collective and thought, hey, there's not enough podcasts in the world. There's a real lack of...
We're trying to corner the market for Anco fans.
Yeah.
So, we're just, two guys in LA who met at a podcasting networking event, and we both really love Animal Collective, and we're going to talk about Animal Collective.
Yeah.
Just two guys, and we're having a good time, having a good time, having a good time. Just two guys.
We've also both interviewed Animal Collective, or at least members of them. I interviewed Panda Bear when I used to work for the podcast Song Exploder. I got to interview him and Rusty Santos. And you interviewed the whole band?
Yeah, I interviewed Dave, Noah, and Brian. Was on the phone for The Ringer. I did like a Merriweather retrospective, which was very nerve-wracking because...
1 on 3.
It was separate, but their publicist wanted me to talk to Noah, a.k.a. Panda Bear, at like 2 a.m. West Coast time because he's in Europe. And I was like...
so you talked to them separately?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was like too nervous to tell him that like, well, it's going to be like, 3 a.m. for me.
Yeah,
but then
like, sure, that works great.
I was like, sure, anything you want, Master Panda Bear. But then we rescheduled it. But we both work in media. Christian, you're more of the learned musician. We're both obviously big music nerds.
Thought for episode 1 we would do a basic intro of ourselves, and we're going to talk about time skiffs here in a bit. But first, in terms of, just more introduction, we thought we'd talk about how we each came to become fans of the bands. And, for me it was the Merriweather Post Pavilion record, which I'm sure, like a lot of fans, at least our age, discovered the band that way. And, if you're an OG head, don't judge us.
Yeah, we're not going to try to pretend we were, like Here Comes the Indian fans from day one or anything.
Yeah, which is now called ARC, right?
That's right, yeah, ARC.
It's Merriweather for me. Yeah, I remember seeing the My Girls video on Stereo Gum, which is the one where they're all, like, kind of black figures with, like, pink mouths.
Yeah,
and
they look like they're underwater.
It's like mostly animated except for their instruments. They have their tables with like samplers on them and like keyboards and like a drum and a cymbal, and by the end they're like melting into green goo. And I remember being really sort of taken with the song and just thinking, this is just so different from so much of the stuff I'm into, so much of the stuff I've heard before. It's both totally new and also, familiar. Like their harmonies and melodic sense. There's something I feel like really nostalgic about it, but it's in this context that's, at least for me at the time, was totally new.
Totally.
And I remember also too just like the setup of the band. It was like 3 dudes standing around, samplers and keyboards, very non-traditional setup. I was so just intrigued by that. And then of course, when the record came out, it was one of those that I spent a lot of time with, and I feel like one of those where you, like, as you grow your relationship with the record, like, different songs sort of stand out at different times, and that record, for me at least, like, each song on that sort of, at different times, was, like, my favorite song, and...
yeah, absolutely. The gift that keeps on giving, yeah, for sure.
And before long, the record came out, and did you have any friends who were, like, had you heard of the band before Merriweather at all? That like,
so I remember, I was obviously a big Stereo Gum Pitchfork reader, and I just remember seeing their name everywhere, and I hadn't listened to them yet, but I was dating a girl, and she played Grass was the first song I heard, and right away I was like, yeah, this feels like something I've heard before, but also something totally new. Like you were talking about the kind of new and the old at the same time, where, it had that kind of Beach Boys, Lindsey Buckingham vibe, which I both loved, but also it felt like this was ours, like it felt new through this kind of modern filter. And then My Girls was the second song I heard. And this was like, I think right around the time the album leaked. I think it leaked on Christmas, like '08 maybe. And that was like a whole, there was just a lot of hysteria, I remember, like of that album leaking and people calling the band for their cell phone or getting their cell phones and trying to get the album. And it leaked on Christmas and everyone, I remember like going on Collected Animals and it was like, everyone was going nuts and I was hooked from there.
So you got on the forum pretty quick, it sounds like once you...
Yeah, I was a big message board forum guy.
Nice.
With just in general, with like a lot of music I liked. But yeah, shout out to Collected Animals, longtime lurker, occasional poster.
Oh, nice.
But great resource.
I haven't dipped in to the old message boards. I was only really ever involved in one message board for a band in terms of just like straight up forum style, like pre-Reddit, pre all that.
Yeah.
And it was for the band Block Party. And I only ever started one thread on there, but it got me banned because the thread was wondering if the lead singer was gay or not. And apparently I went against the rules. Not that I cared, I was just like, 15 or 16 years old and was legitimately curious as to the sexual identity of the singer of my favorite band, as you are.
Yeah, totally.
I remember like the 9 point something on Pitchfork, but I was not really hip to Anco yet. I had a buddy I remember who was playing me Person Pitch, Panda Bear solo record, and I remember him telling me like, there's this band Animal Collective, and like they're all animals, and this one's like the Panda Bear, and like he has a solo record, and I remember like digging it, but like not super clicking yet, like I didn't really have a context for that music, and at the time, I would have been listening to like, probably like Block Party was my favorite band, and like a lot of good like, UK Invasion, and like sort of rock revival. Stuff, and so
same here. When I came hip to their music, it was like definitely like a vibe shift, like where I was listening to a lot of kind of more middle of the road indie rock, like Wilco, Sufjan Stevens, and so when I first heard Animal Collective, it was kind of like that scene in The Wizard of Oz where like, okay, everything's in Technicolor all of a sudden, and like I'm hearing nor seeing everything in the same way. And it was like super refreshing. Yeah, so we're both Merriweather babies. Your first show was not too long after that?
Yeah, so I saw them that summer. I was going to school out here in LA and was home for the summer in Arkansas. And they were playing in Dallas, which was like 5 or 6 hour drive away. And I remember finding like a buddy of mine from high school who like wasn't even really a fan of Animal Collective, and I was just like, hey, here's the CD, show's in a week, like let me know if you're down.
Are you in or you out?
To make this drive with me. And he was. Shout out to Chris.
That's a friend.
And we drove down early in the morning, got in line way too early at the House of Blues in Dallas, and we didn't really exactly know what we were signing up for because Black Dice opened, which, I now understand to be friends of the band, tight homies from back in the day. But woof, for a 19-year-old going in expecting the sugary psychedelic pop of Merriweather to get just 45 minutes of like chainsaw grinding noise with
It's intense,
visuals
dude.
by Danny Perez of like chickens being decapitated and like
Yeah, Black Dice, man. Like, I love it. Like, yeah, them opening up Franco, and then
it's a real baptism by fire.
Just getting assaulted by a wall of sound.
Yeah, it was like we were in the front row, and we were at the point where we were like, do we need to get out? Do we need to bounce and like at least move a couple rows back, get some respite from the.
I love how
onslaught.
they like gave you a chance to leave, basically, but you stayed.
Yeah.
You stayed. You stayed with the cult.
I like that way of looking at it. Yeah, I made it through. And by the time Animal Collective came on, you know, they were just a balm for the ears. And yeah, I mean, no shade on Black Dice at all.
Yeah.
I've actually seen them a handful of times since. I've caught Eric Copeland solo a couple times. And also now there's an LA-based sort of Black Dice offshoot called Flaccid Mojo, who are really great too. So yeah, I'm not a scared teenager anymore. Black Dice rock. That show was just intense.
Yeah.
It was also cool. It was like, you know, the first time that I'd seen a band, you know, like be their own roadies, which is, you know, Anco style. They like put all their stuff out and, you know, they sort of break that illusion of like, oh yeah, we have guys load our equipment, and then not till showtime do we reveal our faces. Like they, and that's something that, you know, attracted me at the beginning too. It was just like the, you know, they were so clearly so different from the rest of the scene, and their like humility in that way was
very unassuming.
Yeah, was part of it. Yeah, amazing show. You know, I didn't realize then, but being a fan now and having seen them many times, I didn't really realize that at the time, but, you know, it was, I guess, a rare tour for them in that they were playing mostly music they had already released. You know, they sort of have the reputation now of debuting a lot of unreleased tunes, you know, on tour before it comes out. But yeah, at that time, they played mostly Merriweather. I remember they played, I think they played What Would I Want Sky, which wasn't out yet.
Banger.
Such a banger. And they did Comfy and Nautica, the Panda Bear track, which I was familiar with at the time. And yeah, closed with Brother Sport, and I didn't want it to end. It was such a party. You know, this is when they had the stage set up basically how it is in the My Girls music video, with like they're basically each standing at tables. They had the big drapes over with the lights underneath, and
yeah, it was a pretty simple, I think, stage setup. I think was there like a crystal ball? I don't remember. They had like the background of the Merriweather album in the background, I think. Or
yeah, they had that big orb they like projected stuff on. What was your first Anco show?
That's cool you got to see them inside. I saw them outdoors at Bonnaroo for the first time in the middle of the day in like 100-degree heat.
Wow. How'd you end up at Bonnaroo?
With the girl I was dating at the time who got me into Anco. We drove down to Bonnaroo. And this was like peak blog, like rock, late aughts. Like the lineup, it was so good. It was like all those kind of like Brooklyn bands, like Dirty Projectors, Grizzly Bear, mixed with everyone from like Wilco to Springsteen to Bon Iver were there. But I just remember walking up to the stage, and there was just like a whole group of people kind of just sitting Indian style, waiting for them to come on. And I was like, okay, I think I've arrived. And everyone was taking acid, and I was like, okay, this seems like an Animal Collective show. I ate some mushrooms, and I just remember like the bass was like very pulverizing and just loud.
Yeah.
I think they opened with Lying in a Coma.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. Fireworks, I remember really sticking out to me, where like after hearing that song, I like went back to my tent and like discovered that song and like just played it. But I remember that being awesome because they played that, I think, for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I remember like two old ladies who could have like been at Woodstock just loving it. Just like smoking a joint and loving it. And yeah, that was my first show was June 2009. Yeah.
Man, I got to go back and look, see when that Dallas show, like it could have been right near there. I mean, because Bonnaroo's in Tennessee, right?
Yeah, Manchester, Tennessee.
Yeah. We probably saw them like a week apart or something crazy like that. It's like Dallas. Yeah. Gotta check that
That's
date.
cool. You got to see them indoors, which like I think must have been so awesome. Like to
Yeah.
hear that. Because they brought their own PAs, I think, for that tour. They just like...
Really?
Yeah, and they would just blast it. So today we're going to talk about Time Skiffs and sort of the return of Animal Collective. So leading up to this album, though, where were you with this band? It seems like with the press and that they got this year, it was kind of billed as a comeback. Mm-hmm. You know, even though they've been putting out music, you know, pretty regularly, though maybe more so apart, it seems like the solo stuff was maybe more, to at least the mainstream public, was better than the album releases as a group. But were you, you know, did you still hang on like these past few years before Time Skiffs came out? How into their stuff were you kind of leading up to it since Merriweather?
I mean, I was coming out of Merriweather hot, you know, like Fall Be Kind, ate that shit up.
Let's not forget Oddsack, too.
Oh, bro.
I count that as an album.
Can't wait for that episode.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember hearing Painting With. I didn't, you know, ignore it by any means, but it's maybe the album I've spent the least amount of time with. And not that the band was off my radar, but, yeah, I was really into, like, the Panda Bear solo stuff going on at the time. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, when Time Skiffs rolled around, I don't know, it's hard to say what expectations I had for it. Like, I mean, they're obviously a band that can change a lot from record to record. You know, it being sort of post-pandemic times, I didn't really know what to expect. I hadn't been paying a ton of attention to like the pre-record release buzz around it. But yeah, I remember when Prester John came out, being pretty excited. I think I texted you that day. I said something like, Animal Collective's like a band again. Like I remember hearing those drum, like the drum set and the bass and even the video was very clear. They're sort of putting out this kind of live band sound and feel, and that was exciting. Coming off of the back of Painting With,
totally. Yeah.
What about you? Where were you at, like pre-Time Skiffs?
Yeah. With them, I feel like it's since they present every album, you know, as Animal Collective, even though it's not all of them, you know. People might think like, oh, you know, their next big thing is Tangerine Reef, you know, whereas it's kind of like a side audio-visual project, you know, kind of almost like a side release. Painting With, I felt like it was doing a little too much. I liked the songs. Maybe I had some issues with the production choices, you know, the hocketing and whatnot. But I liked the songs, and I still listen to it. And, you know, was psyched for when it came out and saw that tour. I did see them in the fall of 2019 when they started really kind of workshopping the Time Skiff songs. Saw them at Desert Days, which is a festival out here in Southern California.
It's a great festival.
Yeah, great
was
festival.
Was that at Lake Paris then?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Lake Paris. And, yeah, I remember, you know, because I'd always like listen to the live stuff before I'd hear the album, and like that would always like really change my perception of the songs. But for this, I didn't listen to any of the bootlegs. I just kind of went in cold and was like, okay, like more of like you said, like they're like a band finally, you know, they're like, it's like they finally like kind of came down to earth, you know, because you had Panda on drums and AV on bass, which I don't think has ever been a thing before.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, and Panda on a full, like, traditional kit, too, which is sort of out of the norm for him. He usually, like, feels like with each record and each tour chooses, like, all right, I'm going to get, like, 2/3 of a drum set. And, like, every
so that struck me
it's
right
always
away.
Different, yeah.
That combination struck me right away. It was all of them. It was bass, drums, and I think basically just keyboards. There wasn't really any samples even. And I was like, okay, these are cool. You know, I wasn't like, oh my God, or blown away, but I liked...
This is when you're hearing the live material?
This was live. This was, and I was like, I like this vibe shift, you know, it's like they're going in a jazzy direction. I was like, okay, nice. And, you know, I always give bands credit for changing it up, even when they go in a direction I don't expect. And, I mean, this band always surprises you, which is one of the reasons I think a lot of people keep coming back. They subvert expectations, but... So I felt like the songs were kind of torn between like this jazzy feel and then like this kind of almost like island kind of xylophony. There was some auto-tune, I remember. I remember, like there was auto-tune. And then the album came out and I was like pleasantly surprised. I thought the songs all really improved. And I thought they were more cohesive and dug it, dig Time Skiffs.
Yeah, it's one of the cool things about this band that are so open with, like, you know, trying out new material live and sort of having that be a integral part of like what ends up being on the record, as you can sort of see these see the progression of these tunes.
Yeah, it was cool seeing the evolution, you know, and so much time had passed. You know, it was I think over 2 years until the album came out. Obviously, there was a thing that called COVID that happened, and I know that they I know that they wanted to record it live, and they had enough for basically, I think it was going to be like a double album, but they remotely recorded this certain batch of songs that they felt that they could do remotely, and I think the other half is going to come out next year, which they did live to tape.
Oh, nice.
So...
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a little bit of, like, the creation of Time Skiffs. You know, they've done a bunch of press for this record, so a lot of it's out there. But just to sort of recap, seems like it started with Dave, Brian, and Josh, and not Noah.
That's right, yeah.
Which is sort of interesting. Yeah, it's cool how each record sort of has, like, a kind of modular build-up of the different members. But yeah, they... we were just watching before we taped their performance in 2018 in New Orleans at that Music Box Village festival, which is, I think Panda Bear was wrapping up buoys at this time, so he wasn't able to make it. But yeah, Dave, Brian, and Josh did a live set there, and there's an early version of Prester John that's, I mean, really pretty early. You can tell there it's kind of just the main vocal melody, and there's some
Avi's part,
Prester John's coming to town kind of thing. And
yeah, it's very different.
Prester John is breaking downtown. His town is breaking down too. He says it's better, but
yeah, that was the inception of Time Skiffs.
Yeah, and then there's an interview with Panda Bear where he says, you know, they had booked, I think, March 2020 to get together and like sort of record the record, and then the old COVID came, the COVID wave, and they sort of had to readjust to be like, okay, well, which of this batch of songs, what can we pull off, sort of being separate. And it's also kind of cool to think like what the like non-COVID Time Skiffs album is like.
Yeah, that's definitely an alternate universe that will never...
Sort of reminds me of like, you know, when 9/11 happened and like the weird musical repercussions that had, and like how there's all these sort of alternative like you know, like the Strokes. You know, they were going to have the song New York City Cops on Is This It, which they ended up taking out sort of last minute.
Yeah, Bruce Springsteen would have never saved the world and made The Rising.
Jimmy Eat World's record Bleed American was renamed retroactively as just like the self-titled because they were afraid Bleed American would be sort of too sensitive a title. So yeah, it sort of reminded me of that. Like, and you know, I'm sure there's there's alternative dimension albums for almost every artist because of COVID. It was...
Animal Collective had to take out all the COVID references for Time Skiffs. They had to,
yeah, a little too on the nose by the time it came out.
I mean, I think it ended up sounding great, like just from like a audio engineering point of view, like it sounds great. Like it kind of sounds live.
It sounds like a band. Yeah, it sort of seemed like their approach this time was, you know, they're always reacting to the previous album, and obviously Painting With was sort of unique for them in that it was like an in-studio creation.
That was like, their LA album,
Right, yeah. And I mean, it seems like it's in terms of like the palette, it's AV and Panda in the rhythm section, sort of laying down the foundations, and then Geologist and Deacon there kind of laying on the mid to high frequency stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it's different soundscapey stuff / hurdy-gurdy.
Yeah, we got to talk about the hurdy-gurdy, man. What an instrument. How do we describe this?
I mean, I know it's like a medieval instrument. It's like a sort of like a violin with a crank.
Yeah, it's this instrument that you crank and it plucks these strings and it gives off this kind of droning, very austere sound. And it's all over the record. But I think it's got Middle Eastern or maybe European origins. Mm-hmm. But it sounds really cool. And I feel like Gio took it on the road. I didn't get to see him for this tour.
I did see him, and you asked me if he was playing, and I didn't really. The hurdy-gurdy wasn't on my radar.
Yeah, it looks
at the time.
It looks like something that like you would till crops with. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, but I mean that's really cool. Where like Geologist and Deacon are kind of stepping up in a different way, and always love to see all four of them together making music. That's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, you said tropical earlier, which I wrote down also.
Oh, you did?
In my notes, definitely. Which it's funny because like the first time I listened to the record, I don't know if I would have sort of caught on to that, but the sort of marimba xylophone sound is everywhere. I mean, I read that Deacon like did not want to play guitar on this record.
Oh, cool.
And he wanted to play keys.
Yeah, he got really good at it.
Wound up in this sort of like xylophone, sort of like melodic percussive zone.
Like loungy keys.
Yeah.
You got like the splashy drums from Panda Bear. So I feel like the tropical thing, it was more apparent when I saw them live before the album came out. And it kind of flattened out, where now the album kind of sounds more like just like kind of a loungy jazz album. It kind of feels like ancient, kind of southern, like also like I feel like a lot of like clanky noises too.
Yeah,
like it kind of feels brittly, like a little bit, like I don't know. It's hard to put my finger on, but it's new territory. Whereas like something like Painting With did not feel like new territory. It felt like maybe an even more exaggerated or truncated version of Merriweather, kind of this very like specific studio creation. But Time Skiffs does feel like a new era, as like they had like their electronic era with Merriweather and even Centipede and Strawberry Jam before that. I feel like this is the beginning of something longer like that, something new.
Yeah, I mean they definitely, the songs feel written very much with the live context in mind. Yeah. Like, I feel like their roles in this album feel, like, more defined, especially in comparison to something like Painting With, where it's like, who's playing what instrument doesn't really matter, whereas this, even seeing them live, it's like AV's on the bass a lot of the time, Panda Bear's back there on, like, the full kit. Yeah, I'd read that Panda Bear was really influenced by like James Brown drumming.
Oh, nice.
Specifically like Clyde Stubblefield, and that he made it a point to like not play hard. He was like, I really wanted to like discover playing the drum set like lightly and sort of going for a more like tonal approach, which makes a lot of sense. I saw him live on the Time Skiffs tour here in LA at the Greek Theater. And I remember kind of thinking, like, man, like, I sort of, like, want him to go, like, a little harder. Like, he,
yeah, I know what you're saying.
In previous tours where he's been doing percussive stuff, I mean, that's part of the Animal Collective thing, is, like, just seeing that energy and seeing that, like, freakiness live. And,
yeah, it was apparent right away, when I saw them pre-time Skiffs for the new songs, that his drumming was different. It was more like kind of like almost like reacting, or kind of more like sensory kind of based, a lot more nuance, which is cool. But yeah, love me some, you know, bang the drum, Panda Bear
totally
sounds as well. Should we get into some of the songs? Well, we could start with Prester John, since it was the first single.
Yeah, we've touched a little bit on sort of first reactions to it. I mean, yeah, I feel like maybe one overarching theme for the record we haven't mentioned yet is just sort of like the groove-based, sort of like rhythmic and meditative. Like, Prester John's a good example where it's, I wouldn't say the most, you know, harmonically complex arrangement. It sort of is drifting between a couple chords. But yeah, the bass and drum groove really hold it down. Read online that it's like you know, combined song ideas from both A.V. Terror and Panda Bear, which I'm sure is a sort of common Animal Collective recipe. But
yeah, the first half is A.V. Or no, sorry, the first half is Noah, right? And then the second half is an A.V. song.
Yeah,
they just stitched together. That's really cool. It's such a good song. You know, one of their best since Merriweather, I think, easily. It's cool to hear Deacon, or AKA Josh, sing with Noah, I think, on the verses. I think they're singing together.
Yeah, he's got that one moment where
he's got the little solo.
Yeah.
It's so cool, yeah. People go nuts live when he does that.
Yeah. I feel like thematically, lyrically, it makes sense that Prester John was the first single, because I feel like it sort of encapsulates kind of the ethos of the album as a whole. Like, because once the album came out and hearing other tracks, I think it's easy to picture a handful of others as the first single, like, you know, Dragon Slayer or Car Keys or Walker, but because Prester John, like, it's, you know, groovy as hell and catchy, but it's pretty laid back for like a first single. It is. It's pretty like contemplative and.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad they picked it, and like, you know, hearing that and watching the video, you know, and seeing them kind of together, especially like since everyone was apart because of COVID, and seeing them kind of be together and sing together, and kind of like, you know, this song is kind of like, I mean, there's some interesting lines in there, treating every day like an image of a moment that's passed. It's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, that to me is sort of feels kind of like the mission statement of the record. And I didn't realize that until earlier today when I was reading the lyrics, but I didn't realize these were the lyrics that immediately precede that refrain until I read it. But the lyrics are, here's a little tip how to look at what is really living, and then it's treating every day as an image of a moment that's past. Yeah, it's really striking. Like, it's, I don't know, there's like a poignancy to it for me. Like, I think being in my 30s and like having 2 young kids, there's this sense of which, you know, in your 20s, I feel like you're sort of anticipating, you know, quote unquote, real adult life to begin. And then at some point you sort of realize like, oh, well, like your life is literally just a string of days, one after the other, and what your life becomes is just what you do each of those days.
Yeah, I mean,
like there's something a little freaky about. There's something a little, I don't know. At least for me, like
it seems like he's kind of alluding to like, I don't know, someone who's unable to be present. I don't know.
Yeah,
but it could mean many things. But yeah, I feel like that song came at the right time, you know, with COVID, and it was kind of like a reset almost. I like that it was kind of this meditative, seance-y type song. And the build-up, I mean, it's got a great build-up too.
Yeah. What do you make of like the Prester John reference to like this
I feel
weird
like
medieval character?
I feel like he's this he's like this medieval king who might have never existed or something.
Yeah, there's some sort of
I don't know.
quasi-legendary.
Somebody that only exists in Avi's mind. I don't know. He sounds really cool. I think the line's like what Prester John is breaking down now or something. Yeah, it just seems like something's ending and something new is beginning, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I think it sort of is reflective of kind of the lyrical content, the album's message as a whole. As you know, these guys are in their 40s now and have families and are getting older, and there's a sense of like, lyrically at least, it feels like there's a sense of like looking back on things and like sort of this reverie of like taking stock. Like even with Dragon Slayer, which maybe we should go to next, the first track, how Avi Terror is saying like, I saw all these things, like I saw the red fire rise. It sort of has this vibe of like, yeah, taking stock, looking back and assessing these things. Speaking of, before we leave Prester John, I'll read a little bit of this. I'm on genius.com, the lyric website.
Great site.
And there's an annotator who gives us this insight from Prester John. He says, Prester John is a mythical figure originating in the 12th century. He was said to be a great and powerful ruler, inspiring much awe and reverence among those that heard his legend. Prester John was renowned as a figure of great wealth and power, his land mystical, paradisical, and vast. Many adventurers sought him, and many ruling figures knew his name. It was thought that he was descended from one of the three magi, and from the Queen of Sheba, and that his empire was vast, with 72 dependent kingdoms. However, Prester John was only a fabrication. Different scholars point towards different sources for his inspiration, but none live up to the grandeur that legendary Prester John held. And, it says Europeans began to realize that the Prester's territory was not so vast, his people so Christian, nor his treasury as bottomless as they had dreamed. The annotator continues, this highlighted lyric could be referencing the breaking down of Prester John's legend, where true reality dismantles mystical tales. Such a theme is in following with the temporal themes of this song and the album as a whole. And yeah, I think there's something, you know, if it is referencing sort of a breaking down of a legend, there is something with like entering adulthood that is characterized by like coming to terms with things as they are, and you know, you've lost the sort of the innocence of youth and the fantasies that go along with that. And yeah, I don't know, it's interesting hearing a band as fantastical and, you know, magically minded as Animal Collective dealing with these things.
Yeah, I feel like their music kind of has gotten a little sadder. I mean, the highs were high, you know, and so when you hear something like Prester John or this album, it feels like they're almost like mourning something, like, you know, the environment. I mean, it's no secret they're like, you know, big environmentalists, or, you know, but it seems like, their music's gotten a little sadder maybe, you know.
Yeah.
But, that's okay, you know. Yeah, okay, so Dragon Slayer, great song.
I really love this song.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, it opens with just like adventurous, happy vibes. Like, I feel like it's like definitely like an AM track.
Yeah, start your day to this.
The vibe I get is like you just started a new video game and you're like walking out onto like the open world, and like sort of the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, like the wonder of it all.
It's definitely got that like live band feel, establishes that early on. And yeah, just crazy like acid trip lyrics from A.B. Terror.
Yeah, those kind of fairy tale imagery that A.V.'s so good at. Right away I think you know that things are very different now, like compared to like Painting With, or, you know, there's like more room to breathe. It's very more chill for sure. You got I love the piano line, or like the key line. I think that's Deacon playing.
Yeah.
And then I think during the chorus, You have Panda come in singing. Yeah, great song. This one definitely stuck out to me when I first heard it. Listened to it a lot. Just ripping live shows. Really like this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, glad to see that this was the opener. Definitely sets the tone. Yeah, it just feels like a middle ground. Like I feel like for a lot of people who maybe were Animal Collective fans, it kind of stopped at, you know, say like a Merriweather, or maybe some of their music can feel like something jumping at your face a little too much, you know, and this is not that. This is kind of, you know, just a little more in its own lane maybe, or just kind of, yeah, just kind of cruising, you know, in a good way. It's not doing too much at all. So
yeah, I feel like earlier you referenced the hocketing and painting with. That's sort of all over. And
yeah,
this feels like much more like sing-alongable and like much more like sort of memorable vocal lines that stick in your head and
yeah,
are a little less, maybe slightly less experimental and adventurous, but pleasing in a way that's like this feels more like a record you could give someone who's not an Animal Collective fan, who's not heard of them, be like, oh, I think you'll dig this, maybe more than something like Painting With that has, maybe it's slightly more leans into those aspects of the band that are, yeah, I don't know, potentially maybe more abrasive or maybe a little more like an acquired taste.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, right away, yeah, it's apparent that there's no you know, program beats. There's not really any samplers. You can hear the drums sound very live. The vocals sound live too. And yeah, it's a cool kind of reintroduction to the band. And this live, it went Car Keys into Dragon Slayer, I remember. And it's reverse for the album.
Car Keys, also a sick track.
You like it?
I do, yeah. It
starts off with what sounds like a shovel on concrete.
Right.
Being scraped on concrete.
Yeah.
That's cool, though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a little more, like, mysterious sounding, I guess, than some of their typical fare. I mean, got that heavy emphasis on the sort of melodic percussive. I don't know if that's, you know, we call that xylo or marimba or whatever, but
get our first Panda track.
Right. We got Panda on lead.
Yeah, he's playing drums and singing.
And it's also got that outro that's sort of like a little vibey and more spacey.
I'm glad they kept that. There was some debate whether they would just cut the song off or keep the kind of the slow dissolve outro like they did live.
Yeah, it does feel like, oh, this is like the kind of thing they would do live between songs.
That's kind of what I was trying to hint to, like, kind of, I think the hurdy-gurdy's in the outro. I could be wrong. But just, yeah, kind of a more percussive, like, kind of, like, sound where there's a lot of, like, high-end, kind of a lot of, like, yeah, marimbas and hi-hats and stuff like that.
Yeah. You were saying, like, pre-time Skiffs, when they were getting together and writing that material, they had like 2 records worth, and that because of the pandemic, most of the stuff that wound up on Time Skiffs was sort of more of the like straightforward, like, oh, this is stuff we can figure out remotely, and sort of the more kind of ambient, like more experimental stuff. It sounds like they're saving maybe for this next one.
Yeah.
But this, I feel like that Car Keys outro is like a example of, yeah, maybe the sort of more spacious, less like structurally defined.
Yeah. I know there's like that song Defeat, which they've been playing live, which is like 20 minutes. Yeah, that I think they're saving for something. I don't know what, if it's going to be an EP or an album, but that's like an example. Like, yeah, it's a pretty loose, abstract song structure-wise. But yeah, there were some really good ones that they left off. I think a lot of Panda ones they left off that they just couldn't get down, couldn't figure them out remotely.
Yeah.
So it'll be cool to hear them in a room, like to tape, which apparently they cut to tape live, and it's been done. But yeah, Car Keys, yeah, weird song, good song.
After that, it's Prester John, and then Strung with Everything, which that also starts off with sort of like the more freeform thing before coming in.
Yeah, that's the other thing. There's a lot of cool ambient segues on this album.
Yeah, they seemed like they had a better idea going in how it would translate live. Yeah, I mean, the live show I saw was cool. It was the last one they performed before they got COVID and canceled, like, the rest of their tour. Like, I saw them the next, like, I think they probably got it at the LA show, so, like, I've been tempted to, like, view it retroactively through, like, oh, they have COVID right now.
It was worth it.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it was a great show. I mean, it was outdoor at the Greek Theater, and like quite a cool night. But yeah, I mean, they played Bluish, which I think before that tour had never been, was the only Merryweather track they hadn't performed live. But yeah, Strung with Everything.
It feels like a callback to like Merryweather. You got the harmonies a little bit, kind of the explosive harmonies.
Yeah. We do get an A.B. scream in that song. I think it's like the only one on the record where he really...
Oh, that's true, yeah.
lets loose.
Yeah. That's... I think that... Is that the only one that they didn't, like, workshop live first? I don't know.
Yeah.
They definitely didn't play that live
I don't think
first.
they played it early, yeah. I remember reading something that Panda saying, like, that's the only one we haven't played live yet. I mean, it has such a live feel on the recording. I feel like...
It's crazy how the album sounds like.
Yeah.
It could be live.
Walker, the next track, another Panda track, and is a tribute to Scott Walker, the late Scott Walker.
That's right.
Are you a Scott Walker fan?
I never really listened to him. I just know that Noah sampled him, I think, on Person Pitch or something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's mainly how I know him, too. I mean, Noah's apparently like a huge fan just of his music in general, which I feel like in keeping with his influences is also sort of surprising. I mean, you know, Scott Walker's like a sort of like deep baritone. Have you ever listened to him? He's like got this very deep, almost like Sinatra like old timey voice that you wouldn't compare to Panda Bear's vocals in a million years, you know, his sort of like higher pitch.
But wasn't he like a pop guy who like turned heel and like started making really weird music or something?
Yeah, I think he got pretty experimental, like especially in his later years. It'd be cool to know like what Panda Bear's favorite era of his is, whether it's like what he's sampling on Person Pitch or if it's like some of the more some of the later stuff. But
yeah, this song definitely grew on me.
Yeah.
I think this was it was one of the singles, right?
Yeah.
I really loved Prester John, and then this was one of the singles, like, okay, cool. All right. But it's grown on me. Definitely.
I feel like this was one of the ones I heard most on like the radio. Like KCRW were playing it, and yeah, when the record first came out. Do you feel like your perspective on the record has changed now compared to like when it first came out, or?
I mean, I think it's still pretty solid. Like, yeah, I still like it. I don't think my mind's changed that much about it. I did think it was interesting that Pitchfork gave it Best New Music, which I was surprised by when it came out, but it didn't make their end of the year list.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But other albums that didn't get Best New Music, like I think that Mitski record. Like, remember that album? My memory hold that album. Like, that album made the list, though. And
they always retroactively do that shit. I wanted to ask about that, because, like, I totally forgot that they gave it Best New Music. I did not remember that at all.
I was surprised, but, like, I feel like the geriatric millennials at Pitchfork were like, all right, we need something. It's time, you know, to bring back Animal Collective. But I was surprised that it was as well received as it was.
Well, I wanted to ask about like the year-end stuff too, because I mean, I haven't done a ton of reading, but it doesn't seem like it's on a lot of lists. I mean, February is like a long time ago, but
yeah, but like the Big Thief album came out, I think, the same day as Time Skiffs, and that's been rightfully so, like topping a lot of lists or been up there. But yeah, the Time Skiffs did not make Pitchfork's best albums list despite getting best new music, but a bunch of albums that didn't get best music did make the album. So Pitchfork,
Whack.
you got to explain yourselves, man.
Whack. I do have a question of whether, like, part of me wonders, sort of like the critical consensus, how this record will stand up. I mean, I think there was definitely a lot of hype when it first came out. You know, I was reading random stuff earlier today, like on Bandcamp, which is where I bought the album.
Nice.
There's like one of the main reviewers, or you know, it's like the first one you see is like, this is the what did it say? It was like, this is the moon-shaped pool to Merriweather Post Pavilion's Kid A.
Okay, I could kind of see that. I mean,
and I thought that was interesting. I mean, first of all, to call Merriweather Post Pavilion Kid A is interesting because, like, on the one hand, it is like embracing technology in this sort of new way that, you know, heretofore you didn't see, especially in indie music circles. But also, it's like, it's their pop record, right? Like, it's...
Right.
That's what Kid A was not.
They're the same in the sense that both Kid A and Merriweather were these both hyper-modern avant-garde albums, but Kid A was a left turn from the pop Radiohead album, whereas Merriweather is an experimental band going pop, so it's kind of the reverse.
Yeah.
But yeah, the moon-shaped pool analogy, I mean, I could kind of see it like that's the sad, like, kind of... we're older, kind of looking back album.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
What's Metacritic saying for Time Skiffs? Okay, 76 based on 25 reviews. So that's good.
They aggregate stuff.
Yeah,
right?
that's pretty good. I think Pitchfork gave Time Skiffs an 8.4.
Is this one of your records of the year?
It is for me.
Yeah.
It is for me.
Yeah.
Definitely top 10, maybe top 5.
Yeah, it's definitely in my top 10 as well.
I mean, come on, dude. It's a fucking Animal Collective album. We listen to it a lot.
Yeah, totally. It's one of the few records I actually bought this year as well.
I'd love to hear it on vinyl. That'd be cool.
I know. I was hoping.
But I'm not paying $40 for a record. Sorry.
Yeah, it'd be cool to check the liner notes.
Would it make your top 5?
Animal Collective records?
Strictly group albums.
Wait, strictly what?
Just group albums. Just Animal Collective.
Probably. I mean, it might be number 5. Yeah.
Cool.
Let's keep going on the songs.
Yeah.
While we have it. Cherokee comes after Walker. AV track. It's one of the more complex songs on the album. It's got maybe 3 or 4 different movements, whereas I feel like the other ones maybe more limited to 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I feel like it's definitely one of the live sort of standouts from the tour.
It's changed a lot too, I remember.
Oh, really? I haven't heard
this one had
early
a lot of
versions.
auto-tune.
Oh,
I remember,
interesting.
yeah. And they took that out, but yeah, definitely a standout for me. I dig this one. I like the build-up when, I don't even know what the lyrics are, but that kind of repeating vocal line that they have.
Yeah, I looked it up earlier today, and at least Genius said, which I'm not sure, how official that is, so I wish we had the liner notes, but it was saying that repetitive build-up part was the stoop that you love.
Yeah.
And I think some of the other lyrics...
Okay, I totally heard it wrong then.
Oh, yeah,
I think I heard it
picturing?
as, if you can do love, you'll heal me. That's just my brain.
I mean, this is just, some... I don't know.
No, I think that might be right, though, what you said.
Well, it is about, A.B. has been living in North Carolina, I guess.
Yeah, this is a very Western North Carolina song. There's a lot of references.
Yeah, there's a lot of references to different stuff, and I was reading earlier today that when they were mixing it, that A.B. Terror took, a picture of, a misty North Carolina mountainscape and sent it to geologists, who was this is what this mix should sound like, and...
It does sound like kind of a wet, kind of slushy, rainy day song.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. Fun fun melody in the lyrics. You know, we've got typical A.V. Terror sort of hallucinatory. There's the Tom Hanks reference.
Oh, yeah.
Which,
and someone is Tom
someone's
Hanks.
at the grill top and someone is Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
It's like a reference of like, he's like at a party or something. And
Yeah. There's a reference to Black Mountain, which is this hippie town outside of Asheville, which I recently stayed at. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of I think there's some kind of famous sort of alternative school there.
Yeah. A lot of New York modernist artists were associated with it, and it seemed like he's sort of paying homage to this home of his and its history, and also it's maybe tied up in some kind of pursuit of knowledge or enlightenment. But I remember seeing them live, this being one that went pretty hard and that a lot of fans seem pretty into. Yeah,
I feel like it's got the hallmarks of things that a lot of people like about them, where it's it's kind of deceptively complex, where they're repeating this line and you kind of get lost in it, and then it goes back to the song, you know, just when you're like, what is going on? Yeah. And that's kind of like what the Grateful Dead were really good at. But they're really good at doing it with vocals and, as a band.
I'm glad you brought up Grateful Dead, because I think this sort of does feel like their most Dead-like album, just in terms of live instrumentation, the vocals that are a little more mixed together and less oh, this is this guy singing, this is that guy singing. There's a lot of sort of choral singing where it seems like they're all on one mic or so.
This is their American Beauty on peyote or something. It's that could be a whole nother pod, Animal Collective and the Grateful Dead. I love this song. I dig it.
Then the last three tracks, we have Passerby, We Go Back, and Royal and Desire. Does anything stick out from those three tracks for you, or?
Passerby's cool. I feel like it serves its purpose in terms of being part of this arc of songs, and it's kind of a more chill song, kind of things are kind of ending, a bit of a breather. It's cool. I was listening to it today. I dig it. It's kind of this kind of smoky, loungy AV song.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, it's maybe maybe on the less memorable end of the spectrum for this record for me. Not that there's anything incredibly objectionable about it. Yeah. We Go Back is maybe an outlier on the record in terms of just sort of the experimentation and weirdness. Yeah. I think it's cool for that reason. It's got the auto-tune and...
Yeah, the vocals are wild.
Crazy sound design stuff, and...
I love Panda's drums on that.
Yeah.
Very kind of chaotic. I dig it.
And then Royal and Desire, the Deacon track.
Man.
On the album.
I mean, so good.
You said the title was a reference to the New Orleans something, or
I think it's a cross street in New Orleans.
Okay.
Which was the beginning of these songs. I don't know. I think maybe Josh had some ties to the area. But yeah, I mean, they are really good at ending albums, and their closers are so good. And I feel like a lot of their closers are kind of sad but happy. And this one though is it's first of all, it's a Deacon song. They gave Deacon the closer, which is so cool. Yeah, it's a tearjerker, man. It's I'm not gonna lie, it's made me choke up a little bit. It feels like this is a band that has finally come down to earth, and are just kind of meeting us, at eye level for the first time or something. It's cool.
Yeah. Can you pinpoint what made you choke up? Or is there a lyric or a line, or is it a melodic moment, or what do you...
I think it's halfway, where I think Noah comes in and the lyric is Sun Shuts My Eyes reminds me of my fight to go away, I think is the lyric, to go away. I just thought that was like so good. Like just fucking beautiful, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a gorgeous song. And kind of just like going with the themes of like, I feel like their music has gotten a little sadder, a little more kind of looking back. Mm-hmm. And this song I think really hits that home.
Yeah.
Actually, I think this song made Pitchfork's list of best songs, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they picked a non-album single, which is cool.
Yeah, to check the list.
But, I don't know. So, yeah, does this song hit you in any way?
Yeah, I mean, damn. I think to follow up on, like, you know, this band is maybe getting sadder. Like or just older.
Are they getting
like
sadder, or am I
it's
getting
interesting
sadder?
to hear. Yeah, exactly. Like, who can say?
Stay tuned.
You know, it's interesting to hear a band that, especially when I first fell in love with them, I felt like was so defined by, like, sort of youthful exuberance, energy, innocence, and to hear those same artists grapple with these heavier, sort of older themes, you know, is really encapsulated, I think, well in this closing track, and also just this record as a whole. I wanted to talk about this record's and this band's connection to broadcasts. I totally didn't know that Geologist was friends with that band, and that, like, it's, I mean...
Okay. I know nothing about this band.
Yeah, Broadcast is a British band formed in '95. They've got a bunch of great records. And Geologist was friends with Trish Keenan, who's the singer who passed away a couple of months before their planned All Tomorrow's Parties set.
Damn.
And it's in the Pitchfork interview that Animal Collective gives for Time Skiffs. The title and like the vibe of the record comes from an interaction that Geologist had with Trish Keenan from Broadcast. Geologist and Trish were pretty good friends in the last couple of years of her life. And Brian was recounting a time when he DJ'd a show that Broadcast played in DC, and Trish from Broadcast was talking about Chillwave, which she was a big fan of, and Brian sort of like pushed back and was like, "Oh, really? Like, to me it doesn't sound like, you know, Chillwave as a genre has like added anything new to music. Like, it sounds like it could have been made in the '80s." And she pushed back on him, or was kind of like, "That's a little snobby and gatekeepery," and like, I guess she brought this idea up to him of time travel, and how every human wishes they could time travel, wishes they had that power, but music can like grant that power to people. How, like, you know, you can listen to a song and it will take you back to wherever you were the first time you heard it. And I mean, just the fact of hearing music recorded decades previously can kind of put you in there. I think there's something to that with like sort of the lyrical themes of Time Skiffs, and how, you know, we mentioned earlier, there's this sort of looking back, taking stock vibe to it that feels sort of poignant and feels like something that the lyrics in Time Skiffs are really trying to get at.
Yeah, I mean, great closer. Love when Deacon gets on the mic. Yeah, so Animal Collective's back, 2022.
Hell yeah.
It's like to hear more new music. I feel like there's a bit of a backlog, but I think we'll get it eventually.
Sick.
Yeah, so.
Right on. Well, thanks for joining us for the first episode of Bonefish. Until next time.
Till next time, zoners. Bye.
Zoners. Boneheads, as we'll call listeners. We'll catch you next time.
Peace.
Bonefish.